Now the next step in the Elijah process, the J, stands for justification. Now here's where the sequential nature of the process, of the steps, may break up a little bit. Basically what we're saying with justification is we're making a decision that this person is the person that we want to add to our family tree, and we are making mental notes at this point as to why. Maybe we're writing some of those notes down. We are going to save these source records, and as we add the person to our tree, we will add our reasoning for why we added them, why we add the information that we do, and we'll submit the sources and why we think those are right. So that's the justification point. In order to do that, we want to make sure that we capture all of these sources that apply. There's two ways to do that. Here we can attach to family tree, which is a one-time attachment to an individual, or if we think we're going to use this multiple times, like in this case with the 1940 census, I've got multiple people I'll probably attach this to, then we just add it to the source box, and then it's available to us to add multiple times to multiple records. So now what we're going to do is add the spouse to Charles Lowe. So we'll go back to his record, and here we have add or find spouse. We'll put in the names of what we know his wife's name was, as much information as we know about her. And I calculated that her birth from the census records was between June of 1896 to April of 1897. We'll go a little bit wider, make sure that we're inclusive enough to catch anybody, any records that might be a little bit off. She's born in Massachusetts, and her spouse's name is Charles Lowe. And that's enough information for us. Let's go ahead and see if there is somebody in the database, and we find that there's not. So here we will add her. I'm going to go ahead and be a little bit more accurate here, and we are going to say June 1896 to April 1897. She was, I need to make sure that it's standardized, so it says from, as it tells me. She was born in Massachusetts. We don't know about where she died, but from her age, she is deceased. She's over the 110 years. We'll say that she's deceased. So we'll go ahead and continue. It'll actually do a search, see if it finds any duplicates, which it won't. It has added her now to the record. Now to finish up the process of justification, once we've added Edna, I'm going to click on her, and I'm going to go to her person record, and down at the bottom we can add sources. I'm going to attach a source from a source box. I have the 1930, and now I'm going to explain why I added it. This census record shows the name of my wife, Charles E. Lowe, to be Edna. It also shows her mother is living, them, and her name is Mary C. Rao. Sorry, that's Edna R. It is assumed that the R stands for Rowell, so we did not name her Edna R. Rowell. Okay, I'm also going to attach the 1940 census as an additional source of the Status, Edna Rowell as wife of Charles E. Lowe. Okay, that's enough for now in terms of adding sources. But if we go back now to view her record, we see that the two sources that we just added are viewed for her, are tied to her record. Now, while we're still on the topic of adding people, Edna's and Charles' two children were born since 1904. The 110-year rule tells me a couple of things. If I were going to do work for them, I'd have to get permission of the nearest closest relative. And if I don't know that they're dead, I shouldn't be putting them in as dead. So I'm going to not put them in until I've done some further research. But obviously that's my next step, is I'm going to find John and Mary and see what I can find about whether they're still alive, and if not, when they died. But I can add a parent to Edna, and that parent's name is Mary C. I don't know her last name. I know that she's a female, and that is all I know about her. That's not going to be enough to give us any. It's not going to be enough for us to be able to do any work for her, but at least it's a placeholder for further research. As I look at the rest of these, I have no indication of any of these being a match. So we'll go ahead and just say none of these is a match, and we'll add this record. If we later find out more information about her, we'll obviously do a search of possible duplicates. I need to put that she is deceased to finalize this. And she's added. So now that we have added Edna, we have the opportunity to request her records be, or excuse me, her ordinances be done. So let's go up to the top to ordinances, and you'll notice that baptism, confirmation, initiatory, and endowment, and sealing the spouse are all available. We don't know her parents, we can't seal her to them yet. But this is where we prepare ourselves for the house of the Lord. We request these ordinances. All of those will be requested. We continue. And we'll want to read this. If you haven't read this before, it goes through things that you need to know. And I'm going to add these to my temple ordinance list. They're not yet printed. So what I need to do as a last step is go to my not printed. I do have some additional ones I have not yet printed, but let's just focus on Edna. And we have now work that we can do for Charles Endicott Lowe. We just indicated as well, because now that we know his spouse, he can be sealed to her. And then we've got Edna Rowell to be sealed to him, as well as to have the rest of her work done. And now let's just go ahead and select those for printing. Once we do that, select all of them. This will create a sheet that, as it tells us, we can take to the temple and have our cards printed. So after printing out the family ordinance request, I brought it here to the temple, and from that they've printed out two ordinance cards, a pink one representing the individual ordinances that need to be done for Edna Rowell, and the yellow card that represents the sealing of Charles Endicott Lowe to Edna Rowell. I've taken upon myself the responsibility now to make sure that these ordinances get completed. Obviously I'm going to need some help, particularly as far as female proxy goes. So I'm going to enlist the help of my friends, family first, friends and ward members as necessary to make sure that this work gets done. Remember that President Howard W. Hunter taught that those who perform temple work are getting half the blessing. Those that do family history research are getting half the blessing. But those that do the family history research and then do the ordinance work, for those that they have found, receive the complete blessing. I encourage you to go forward, know that there is help on both sides of the veil. This is God's work. It is real, it is true, and I wish you well.